Yeah. So handsome fell on the right here is Zalae with the Druid, Paladin, Warrior, and a banned Rogue. Stancifka with the Rogue ban is just accepting that he's got no chance against it with the lineup that he's brought. He's not willing to fight off against it. He's playing the Priest that we saw earlier, Purified Priest. Rogue we still haven't seen. You mentioned he played a bunch of Miracle Rogue recently. And the Paladin could be anything from, well, it's probably mid-range knowing Stancifka, but...
Yeah, mid-range Paladin with Wild Pyromancers tends to be what Stancifka brings. So I expect it to be that. And I expect him to try and queue up Silence Priest 3 times until he gets a win with it, because he doesn't want to reveal information about his other decks, and this is going to be his most difficult deck to get a win with in the series. So if he goes 0-3, then he will have revealed no new information to his future opponents, but if he happens to get a win with it, then he will risk revealing the information to try and, win the series.
Yeah, I don't know if Zalae is going to feel any worried, though, having seen the Purified Priest. Again, it's one of those decks that... Purified Priest is a weird deck because it's got the potential to sweep you if it just draws okay and it just gets the Divine Spirit kills. Sometimes you just have no chance against it. When they get the right taunts, they get the right silences with the right timing, you just can't do anything against them. But on the other side, from Zalae's perspective, you look at the Druid, and we've seen how consistent it's been so far. We've seen the Paladin just tear apart lineups, and the Pirate Warrior just one of the most dominant forces in the metagame. I don't really think there's a weak point in his lineup, and lining up against the Rogue and the Priest with this aggressive... 3-class setup is probably going to give him a huge edge, just in general.
Right, yeah. The Rogue has outs. Like, the Rogue really is going to struggle versus Pirate Warrior, but Rogue versus Paladin, Rogue destroys Paladin, especially if it is that Miracle Rogue. And Rogue is not that bad against the aggro Druid because it has such great removal to keep them off the board and lower the value of their buffs. It just doesn't really have the best answers to living mana, which is where it can often fall short. And then... Paladin, I think, can always get a win. It's just really the Silence Priest. If Stan can get a win with the Silence Priest, he's got a good shot of taking the series. And Stancifka's a really good player and oftentimes has huge lineup disadvantages. And I'd say this is one of the times where he's got a pretty big lineup disadvantage. But EU versus CN during the group stages, it was 7 days of group stages, round robin. He went 5-2 in the group stages, and I think his lineup was unfavored against every single player except one guy, by like a pretty substantial margin, and he still just went 5-2. So the guy's really good at figuring out how to win when his decks are just not supposed to win, and that's really impressive, especially in this metagame where oftentimes matchups are super polarized.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, we've talked about him as a bit of an innovator earlier. We didn't see anything crazy out of the ordinary from the Priest, Purified Priest. We saw Sun Fury kind of a recall to the earliest versions of it that were on the ladder when Angora came out, and then people have kind of stepped away from that. But he's going back to it as he's really targeting aggressive decks with his Priest build. I don't know exactly how he's going to adapt the Rogue to target those aggressive decks. You do need to...
You don't really have to adapt it too
much.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's got pretty good matchups against aggro nowadays with just the standard variations of Miracle Rogue, just because of how much removal is in the deck and how much you can clear the board. Like Backstab's so good, and Hallucination and the Pirate package, as well as Razor Petal Lasher, all being pretty good cards against aggro. Oftentimes you'll see if you're targeting aggro SI7 instead of Questing Adventure. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I think the really the onus is still on the Rogue to get the right draw. It's a pretty big deal because I feel like we've had Rogue historically, kind of defeat itself when it didn't draw. And I think although that's less true now than it used to be, since it's got more tools and more avenues to be proactive than it used to, it oftentimes against aggro nowadays is still super reliant on those backstabs, eviscerates, get the Prap Fan of Knives against wide boards from Druid. So it's really just going to be the Rogue having to draw the right cards as opposed to having a generally good matchup. Druid doesn't need to do too much, right, to beat the Rogue. You can have a slowish start and still get away with it, as long as you're able to get there at some point.
Living mana is insane in the Druid versus Rogue. Rogue needs to have, if it runs Thalnos, which it doesn't always run Thalnos, it needs to have the Thalnos Fan. Otherwise, you're going to kill 2 of the 2/2s, and then they're still going to kill you with it. So just not having an answer in the class currently for that is a huge bummer for the Rogue.
Yeah, and killing 2 2/2s has got to be the worst amount because you just put them into Savage War mana count. It's just enough that they're going to kill you straight up with whatever's left over. Yeah, we've seen a lot of games actually, even in tournament settings where, the game is lost on the back of somebody killing just the bad amount
All right, here we
of
go.
2/2s. We had some issues getting started with Stancifka, but we've resolved them, and onwards to the game we go. He will be opening up with, well, mid-range or control Paladin, depending on what's left in this deck. It looks like a mid-range list based on this opener.
The two Stonehill defenders strongly signal for mid-range. Both players mulligan all of their cards as they are garbage.
Ooh, here we go. Against Paladin, not the most exceptional card, but...
Yeah, it gets Aldored. It's Sunkeeper Tarimmed. It's just not really great to have that kind of minion available. So what's the best way to develop your board to contest this 1/3? You see your opponent full mulligan, so the likelihood of Rock Pool goes down. None of these plays look very happy.
Yeah, I dislike pretty much every single one of them. I would go for the South Scene to coin frothing, as at least you get to do a little bit of work like before the True Saver turn, which is usually what you're looking for. But even then, your mana, usage on the following turns based on the current hand is looking a little bit clunky, man. I'm not.
He's going with the Bloodsail Raider, trying to play around the Rock Pool a little bit instead of going with the deckhand, which is just saying if he has Rock Pool, I lose. So he's hoping that he can beat the Rock Pool. This way he can trade into the 1/2, take a value trade. No weapons, not good.
Yeah, not for this deck. Your entire early game is very contingent upon you having those weapons set up. Jet Corsairs waiting. Nugget Corsair, another card that's likely to get you more mileage if you have those weapons set up. And right now, that War Leader just finds no answer from Zalae's side if he doesn't pick up a War Axe at the very least. Oh man, at least an Azaz first mate with the South Sea deckhand would have helped, but
yeah,
this is dreadful. This is just awful.
Well, he didn't hit a weapon, and he didn't take a very gambly opening, right? He tried to say, you know what, I'm going to coin 2/3 into 2/3, and I'll be able to maybe beat Rock Pool, I guess. I would have liked to see him maybe just go deckhand into coin frothing and be like, well, I hope you just hero power pass, then maybe I have a chance. Because his own hand, going coin 2/3 into 2/3, I don't think really beats anything from the Paladin. It doesn't set up for something snowball-y.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to talk about that, you and I. Just bring him to the side, say, hey, Zalae, I noticed, that game against the Paladin? You should have just gone and hoped.
Yeah, sometimes you got to do that. And when you have a bad hand, sometimes taking the line that's mediocre loses every time, and you got to just risk it. Hope they hero power. He would have gotten rewarded because he did hero power, but he's going to try and buff up a frothing now. Takes the trade in there to try and play around some of the buffs off Gentle Megasaur and whatnot.
Yeah, to be fair, though, if Zalae picks up, say, Nzaz first mate right now, he's still in an okay spot. He can still salvage this, but, the Paladin is not taking nearly enough damage at this point in the game for Zalae to feel confident he can close this out. Oh, man, and more weapon synergy with no weapons. Can we make this any worse?
Well, if he finds weapon, he can still turn it all around. So the only play here is Core Crown Elite the face.
Sure, let's go. We pick up Reaper off the top. Then we Captain Greenskin. Then we Reaper off the top again. We just kill him with weapons as soon as... Honestly, I'm laughing now, but that's probably the winning line at this stage. I don't see how else we close this out. That Bitter Tide is going to have to put in work.
Oh, Sunkeeper Tarim.
Never mind. We're not reaping the face.
You want to take Noble Sacrifice or Redemption? Either of those are good. Maybe Redemption protects your guy better. But you want to be able to protecting your War Leader from a potential 1-damage weapon from Zalae's side. Or Charger or whatnot, because the War Leader is going to just accumulate sick value.
What's the hand read you've got at this point? That there's 2 Core Crown Elites, maybe an Arcanite Reaper, and one of those weird buffs. So the range that you're pinning Zalae on includes a Reaper. So that Noble Sacrifice is looking like a mighty powerful play here. Right,
he's trying to just box out a Reaper and force the race to be won by him.
Yep.
But there's no Reaper, no burn. He's got board control tools that have been made lackluster because he didn't have a weapon.
So if you play the War Axe here into South Sea deckhand, you can technically... So he plays around Repentance, incidentally, and can also check for Noble Sac, and then finish off the War Leader. So Gives him a weapon for greenskin. Could pick up the upgrade, make this War Axe absolutely massive.
Stancifka won the mind games with the Q order in Conquest, by the way.
Yeah, he Q Purify Priest earlier, got completely destroyed, but this time around just went with the mid-range Pally and nailed it.
Well, so Zalae's best deck against Purify Priest is Pirate Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And so he queues Pirate Warrior first, expecting Stancifka to continue queuing the Silence Priest so that Stancifka doesn't give any information away about his other deck list because he feels unfavored in the series based on the lineups. Well, that made it so Zalae's Q order was predictable, so he queued his best deck against Pirate Warrior. So it's kind of interesting that means Stancifka, I guess, feels that he's not unfavored enough to not be able to just win this series, even with Silence Priest being super targeted by the lineup.
Because you'd open up with it if you really thought it was hopeless and just try to get the win in and then move on.
Right. You wouldn't want to reveal information about your other decks, but...
Yeah. Well, Zalae here has the option of buffing up the weapon, creating a 4/5 and a 3/3 onto the board. The issue is there's 9 damage on the board. You're probably on a 2-turn clock, possibly even almost dead next turn if things go Stancifka's way. It's kind of hopeless for Zalae. The fact that he's got to go through the Stomp minion just kind of locks out the damage output.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could try for Bitter Tide, but I don't think that's really helpful at all. Worst case, best case scenario, he triple trays, you're down to 9. Okay. Best case scenario. We're laughing, but okay.
This is more stats than Bitter Trade, so like that.
Megasaur is lethal a sizable amount of times, right? Wind Fury and +3 attack both do it.
Sure. And you can even Outdoor after if it all goes wrong.
And it did go wrong, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, you're so far ahead. It'd be hard to throw this one out.
Yeah, +1/+1, take the trade on the captain, the rest goes face. You can kill that, I guess. Still sets up lethal. There's no outs.
And Zalae getting taunted by Nazar's first mate at the end of the game. Could have been there early, but was not. Now Zalae is going to go down to the mid-range Paladin, which is good for Stancifka. He's starting the series with 1 point on the board. It's not really something he could do earlier with that Purify Priest opener. Wonder if he's going to queue it up right away and try to get the win, or keep it for last. Yeah, so this is going to be the last match of the day. Stancifka versus Zalae. Most of these players from Group A have been playing, and they've played a substantial amount more than the players from Group B, which are going to be starting soon enough. We have Stancifka, of course, and Zalae from that group, RDU today, that ended up playing. We have Show that played as well earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
Or last week, I should say.
Yeah, it's Monday. So yeah. I guess last weekend, I think it was.
Yeah, it was about a few days ago. I was in Poland. I didn't get to watch his matches because usually I follow StarLadder pretty closely when the matches start, when the season starts. Purify Priest is out.
Right.
Let's do it. I believe in us. There's no weapon this time.
There is still no weapon again. He could brick on a weapon yet again and find himself falling over, but
I mean,
generally speaking, this is a heavily favored Pirate Warrior matchup because the minions from the Silence Priest are just too slow, and they don't have good reactionary tools to important things like Captain and Frothing can often stick, which costs the Silence Priest the game a lot of the time.
The thing, though, is that without a weapon, the best tool against Priest is not in Zalae's hand right now. Because that's really what it comes down to. The weapons are so backbreaking for Priest when they come out. It's really difficult for them to outvalue that because they end up having to spend so many bodies that are premium on nothing, and then they get blown out by whatever exists on the board, especially Purify Priest, where board control is everything. You're not running any board clears to get out of sticky situations. So, he's thinking about silencing coin shielding.
Yeah, just to be able to play around like Fiery War Axe, for example.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that. You set up the Cabal Talon Priest, and then you have a huge trading body on the board. That's massive.
Right. If your opponent ignores the minion, you can just Shambler it, right?
Yeah, on the following turn, you just completely blow them out.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the way Purify Priest wins against Warrior, is they just set up one big taunt and hopefully pick up a way to get it to live by having high enough health. That's really the big problem, is when you don't have the Humongous, you then have to go through a few hoops to set up a big health minion with taunt. That's the issue. Humongous Razor Leaf increases the win rate of that deck by a huge margin, I'm sure, if you draw it.
Well, this looks tough for Zalae to win. Without a weapon, you can't really stop the growth of these big minions. I mean, like, you could captain and trade both of them in, but it's so expensive. But he is going to do it, it looks like. I think it's the correct play in the situation because, you know, they have so many tools to just make this minion go out of control. Like, if Divine Spirit comes down and then Shambler comes down, you just lose the game. So you kind of have to take this line and just say, I'm going to draw a weapon. He did not draw a weapon, though, so...
I was going to say, as optimistic as he might have been, I mean, he's not out of it yet. Like, we're laughing about this, but truth is, if he just gets the Watcher out and with the Korkron, feels awful, granted. If he then gets the Reaper, gets the free Dread Courser onto the board, a buffed up Raider afterwards, it's not over yet, right? He is, however, looking for those weapons desperately.
Mm-hmm. He's just removing the highest health minion every turn to lower Stancifka's ability to blow him out with Divine Spirit combos into taunts. Needs a weapon.
And Stancifka is considering just Radiant Elemental hero powering the 4-2 here instead of Cabal Talon Priesting, because either way, the Reaper is the thing that kills your minion. That it has 4 or 5 barely even matters. It's a matter of the long-term max health your guy can have.
He just wants to flood the board.
Sure, that's
he's going to zoo Zalae down. He's like, well, you've spent so many resources trading. Now I'm going to change my game plan to punish that. I like that. Yeah, I think a lot of people there would just heal the minion, but now going wide, now he threatens to just have a Shambler come down on anything random or be able to heal Cabal Talon Priest next turn. Keep just going wide, pushing a bunch of chip damage.
And Humongous Razor Leaf with the Faceless Shambler. These are the cards that Stancifka was looking for. The pace of the game it developed the way that Stancifka wanted this time around. Not what we can say about his previous Purify Priest matchups, where everything went downhill as soon as the weapons started pouring out. This is definitely a lot better for Sivka than it was prior.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that Watcher is massive.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to... Zalae was trying to bank on drawing a weapon these past few turns. He's never able to find one, so... The big minions are finally going to start sticking for Stancifka, and that's going to be the end, because the Shambler is going to be able to come down, Divine Spirit could come down, all these sort of game-ending things.
Why would Zalae be upset, right? No weapons and like 20, like maybe 15 cards over 2 games? Yeah, no problem. Well, whatever, man. Why would he be upset? Why would he be upset?
It's painful. If he went for the all face plan, he would also lost. So
yeah,
I like trying to open yourself up to find the weapon. It's kind of how you play the matchup, but
here we go.
You never get there.
And that's a 4-9, and there's another one behind it. It's kind of difficult, really. Like, the Faceless Shambler is, I want to say, like, very often a dead card in Purify Priest, but it's one of those cards that goes from, oh, I could still lose this game, to I've completely locked this out. It's kind of it's not a win more, it's kind of your win condition in that deck. And against Pirate Warrior, it just is even better than probably anywhere else, I think. So Zalae just going to scoop it, knowing full well that there's no way he's going to go through 9 health and the Priest health total before he's dead.
Well, Stancifka up 2-0. This deck's making it through. Gets the hardest win out for the other way already. The Silence Priest is through. So he has a decent chance. It looks like he switched up from Miracle Rogue that he played at EU vs. CN to the more traditional Quest Rogue, which is not good for him in this set.
Yeah, this is not the matchup you want this in. If Zalae's running all aggro, you're probably going to get torn apart in one of the 3 matches that's coming up. But and he's got the Glacial Shard. You know, let's give him some credit. Maybe that can deliver if he gets enough freezes and enough bounces to make it happen.
It's got the Tolver Stone Shaper, which is kind of cute, can come down. But Zalae finally getting a weapon. It's going to be in good position this game.
Hey, he didn't even draw patches. This is looking perfect. He's good to go. He's going to keep the weapon charges here, knowing full well that he's going to have to try to chip away at whatever comes down. Help remove some of the 1-2s, you know, Fireflies and whatnot, if those end up being played. So A lot of value to be found in this. Plus, you're also keeping the charges to buff up the frothing.
Right.
Instead of just throwing them in the face. They're valuable, but they don't clean up the board at the same time. So the damage ends up translating over the same way. Looks like Stancifka's got a pretty dry hand from Zalae's perspective.
Well, that's a good draw for Stancifka. Pick it up.
Yeah, the best thing, too, is that he gets to play the Glacial Shard without even using Shadow Step the turn before Tol'Vir Stone Shaper comes out. So he's going to be able to get himself a defense wall against what Zalae's going to put down here. That's actually pretty insane in this spot.
One more bounce effect and Stancifka's going to win the game.
Well, I mean, that Frothing's putting a little bit of...
The Frothing will never attack.
Not this game. Not with Glacial Shard.
You don't play the Tol'Var here, right? You can kill the 3/3 and freeze the Frothing.
I think I like that line more.
You can Tol'Var and play the freeze guy again. The Tol'Var protecting it from your opponent's minions.
Like, Tol'Vir Stone Shaper is so ridiculous against Arcanite Reaper. It soaks up the 2 hits. It's just one of those... Like, the best thing, too, is that even when they pop the Divine Shield with their weapons, like the Hook, for instance, or the upgrade weapon, the Kor'kron still smashes itself into it and dies. So Warriors just have no clean way to do it unless they find an extra ping than their Hook. Because every combination of damage outputs that kills the Tol'Vir is always just 1 damage off. And it's so clunky when they're freezing your board at the same time. Oh, man. That Shadow Step.
Quest is almost done.
Yeah, we're looking at 1 more shard. The 1 in the hand can already be played, so we can assume he's at 3 out of 4. Oh, that Corsair and Kor'kron, though, I mean, that's a ton of damage output. Not sure if...
He's got 4, 8, 12, 13, 14 damage. So you want to play the non-charge minion unless you're saying the game is going to end too quickly. I won't have enough mana to get both chargers out. Which I don't think is true. So I think you want to play the Naga Corsair. But there are situations there where you would play the Kor'kron Elite. It's just a little bit rarer, and it would be if you had enough damage in hand. Or you think game's ending too quickly. That's the final freeze effect.
That's the final freeze he can put down, but...
He can complete the quest this turn, freezing both minions, playing 2 5/5s to contest them.
Seems about good. But Zalae still has a window of opportunity, right? If he doesn't know the Tol'Vir Stone Shaper is there, so he's probably going to just seize it and try to push. I mean, it's so clunky, though. God.
And completing the quest on turn 5 while freezing all of your opponent's damage and having a taunt is very good.
Feels freeze mage, man. I mean, that's just... Like, here's a question, right? Who would have thought that Glacial Shard would be such a staple of the meta? People looked at it and said, oh, maybe in Zoo in some fringe cases. This thing is just a staple now. Huh.
You're going to want to develop a minion this turn so that you can then have... Well...
6 mana, maybe you Reaper for 6 mana efficiency, but I like the Kor'kron. It's just kind of... It means your Reaper is not before turn 7 or so to maximize damage output.
Just having 3 minions in the field means your opponent takes 2 trades, there's still 1 minion left, making them required to have a charger to get the full clear. He's got to be trying to figure out what is in Stancifka's hand. What has he been holding on to? There was a really long pause on turn 4 turn 5 when he decided to go with the double freeze line instead of the Tol'Var Stone Shaper. He gained some information from that, possibly, but it is really hard to put him on Tol'Var Stone Shaper or anything specifically in this situation.
Yeah, you might as well just be on another prep, honestly, at this point. Like, there's so many possibilities. It's difficult to assume that you're simply going to get locked out by a taunt minion with a Divine Shield with a Reaper in hand. But even if you do get locked out, you can still find the win here. It just comes down to what Stancifka picks up off the top. Well, that is a way to balance the freeze again.
Right. We can now refreeze the Frothing Berserker for yet another time, but then we will lose the ability on the Tol'Var Stone Shaper. But you can pick up the freeze as a 5/1 if you'd like.
I mean, we could kill the Frothing now, right? Just trade into it with a 5/5 and just freeze the Corsair.
Well, if you freeze the Corsair, Tol'Var's gone. So you probably just play Tol'Var.
Yeah, and you keep the freeze for later. If he plays a weapon, you just freeze the face, so you can't connect. I like the Tolvir here and just going
Well,
for that
actually, it
trade because
gets
it is a 5/5
reactivated.
with Divine Shield.
It gets reactivated again by the Glacial Shard. What are we talking about?
No,
So
it
yeah, you
will get
just
reactivated, but the issue is that it's not coming down because do you want the freeze now more than you want just a 5/5 with Divine Shield and Taunt? Is my
I mean,
question. I feel
yeah,
like you
it's a
could keep
really
Glacial
good board
long
for
term.
5/5 and taunt and Divine Shield.
Yeah. It just seems super solid because unless he picks up like another hook,
Hmm.
there's a very high chance he overkills your Tolvir by a ton in that spot.
He wants to get rid of all the pirates to remove upgrade effects, so he's going to
Okay, fair
increase
enough.
the frauding.
But then you
Yeah.
need a small weapon to make that good. Huh. Do you just Reaper down that shard? uh, I don't think there's a world in which you can afford to.
You try
I
and
mean,
kill your opponent is what you're
yeah.
thinking, right? Like Reaper face, and then next turn, bam, he's dead.
That Tolvir is going to completely shut down Zalae
Yeah.
if he goes for that line of play. He's going to get completely shut out.
Seeing Stancifka pick it up and put it down a bunch last turn, you could maybe assume it's not Vanish, and you're starting to narrow in on the fact that it might be Tolvar. But what do you do if you know it's Tolvar? So if we assume Zalae's a Jedi and has read into the fact that this is Tolvar's Stone Shaper, what's the best possible line in that instance?
You kill the Glacial Shard. You force the
Why?
Frauding to trade into the 5/5, or the 5/5 to trade into the Frauding. Naga Corsair on the second Reaper hit, end up trading into the Tolvir over 2 turns, and then you finish them off with Korkron, Heroic Strike, and whatever other damage draw you pick up for exactly 9. You need like a hook to make that work. So, that's going to complicate things a little bit. Okay, an extra 10 damage in the form of Chargers is going to make matters a little bit more awkward. Yep. That's an understatement. And suddenly, is there anything? South Sea? Yeah, that's it. GG.
It's dead.
Tolvir Stone Shaper, once again.
Quest
MVP.
Rogue being like the target of a counter lineup and finding its way out. These new changes that people have made to Quest Rogue. Previously, people would play 2 Galaka Crawlers and like 2 Hungry Crabs in their Quest Rogue, and that's how they would try and counter the aggressive decks. And now they've kind of switched to some of them running Tar Creepers as well as Tolvir Stone Shapers to stop the aggressive decks and just be more well-rounded answers to situations. So it's not as much as how it was before where you just have to draw your correct crab for the matchup. Now you can actually stall them out with taunts, and it's been working a lot better for the Quest Rogue players, and we can see them escaping the conquest targeting strategy now.
Yeah, and you can also, I don't know if you've aired on the side of Wild at all, since the Heroic Tavern Brawl, but Quest Rogue over there is actually running Anoyotrons, and you think Tolvir Stone Shaper is good, just wait until it's just baseline 5/5 Divine Shield, and you don't need the Elemental Activator. That things get really, really dirty really fast. So that deck apparently proving its strength even in the hands of, somebody who preferred Miracle Rogue. Stancifka really preferring the Miracle Rogue play style is still ended up piloting the Quest Rogue. These blowouts today, man. These blowouts.
Yeah. I mean, Zalae, I think, had a favorable lineup against Stancifka, but he didn't draw weapons the first 2 games with Pirate Warrior. You're going to take those losses. That can happen. And then the third game, the quest was completed on turn 5 while developing 2 5/5s. So you're not going to beat Quest Rogue when that happens most of the time. So I don't think it was any really fault to his play. Just sometimes you don't draw weapons, and sometimes Quest Rogue high rolls you. It's kind of like what happened to Orange, honestly.
Yeah,
it's pretty brutal to watch.
I feel like Quest Rogue today is probably like on display exactly the reason why some people think the deck is just over the top across all the matchups. The truth is, when it high rolls, there's really just nothing you can do about it, which is the story of the deck overall. So, that being said, guys, this was the last match of the day for the StarLadder iLeague StarSeries. We will be coming back in 2 days. On the 18th of May, I'll be casting with Lothar. We'll be starting at 18 p.m. CEST. And on that day, we shall have Pavel, the world champion, versus Stanudachi from Russia.
That's
Super
gonna be a fun
JJ
game.
versus Kalento. It's going to be great. It has to be great. Stanudachi versus Show as well that we've seen play a little bit earlier this week. Super JJ as well versus Stancifka, and Show versus Pavel. So a lot of friendly rivalries are going to be happening that day, which is pretty cool. I like to see that.
Yeah.
So Anything you're looking forward to?
Now, I'm looking forward to watching the Pavel versus Stanudachi game. Those those guys are really amazing to watch, and a little bit of a rivalry between them, which is always fun. And then also Stanudachi versus Super JJ. Those guys were practice partners for literally years. So watching them play against each other, always an exciting time.
Yeah. Well, on this note, guys, we wish you the best for the end of the day or night, wherever it is you are. And until we come back in 2 days, have fun. Thanks for watching.